Hey guys, it's Lordafish. So we're here for a fresh new Modern League, but before we can get into the gameplay, I have to talk about the deck list. So in the deck list, we're running 2 Dismember main deck. So I was playing them in the sideboard, and it was okay, but I think main deck they're going to perform pretty well, just because a lot of the metagame is very creature-based already, and Murktide and 4-color Elementals, and even Hammer Time, it's pretty good versus those decks, and those are some of the top decks in the format, so Dismember seems to be really good right now. So a lot of Merfolk lists have been playing Curse Catcher. Now personally, I'm not a believer of the card, but it has seen a lot of success, so I'd love to playtest it and just see how it performs. Now in order to bring in all those new cards into the main deck, we had to cut something, and in this case we had to sacrifice Force of Negation. So even though I personally think Force of Negation is a great card, it's just a lot of the best decks in the format aren't necessarily good versus Force of Negation, so it's becoming more and more of a sideboard card. Now, I also still have Spell Pierces in the sideboard, and some Merfolk lists aren't running them, but Indomitable Creativity has been doing well, so I think they're still good. And with that said, I think we can get straight into the gameplay. So we're on the play, and this opening hand, it's not the best, but it's pretty keepable. Now what's interesting is, our only blue sources are the Autowaras, which are legendary, which can be frustrating, but the Ether Vial helps us with that, and we can always cast a Vidalian Hexcatcher with the Mutavault because of that generic mana in the casting cost, so this hand overall just seems fine. So we pass through to our opponent here, and they play a tapped artifact lands and just pass to turn. So here, we're going to uptick the Ether Vial. We draw a basic land, so we play that out and just pass through to our opponent here, holding up both a Vidalian Hexcatcher or Merfolk Trickster, depending on what our opponent does. They play out Urza Saga, so that means they're going to probably make a few construct tokens, so it's best to play out Vidalian Hexcatcher here, rather than the Merfolk Trickster, that way Trickster can kill the construct tokens. So they play Welding Jar, and just pass through from here. So on their end step, I played Vidalian Hexcatcher. Now here I ticked up Ether Vial to 2. So don't really want to play out the other Autowara because we're just going to have to sack one. Here, we'll just swing for 1 and pass the turn. Their Urza Saga triggers, that's fine. And I believe they decide to make a construct token. So the thing is, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to kill that construct token. And I'm like, so I'll Trickster it and hopefully kill it. I'm hoping that our opponent doesn't notice that they have the Welding Jar and can regenerate it, since I'm just hoping that. But for some reason, I vialed into play the Trickster rather than casting it, which is, that's, I should have cast it, that way I can violence to play the Master of the Pearl Trident. I don't know why I was thinking that, but I did that for some reason, and I noticed almost immediately. So here, we have an option. We can sacrifice the Merfolk Trickster to counter the Thoughtcast, or just let the Thoughtcast resolve, and I'm like, Merfolk Trickster is a 3/3 body, but I think we're just going to let the Thoughtcast get countered, because, we only have to do this once. If I had to sacrifice for both Vidalian Hexcatcher and Merfolk Trickster, then I would probably let the Thoughtcast resolve, but this could mean a lot less bodies on our opponent's side as quickly, and just a 3/3 isn't that relevant, even though it's nice. So here we draw Vidalian Hexcatcher, and I decided just to play out Mutavault and pass the turn. So the thing is, we could attack with one of the Mutavaults, but here's the thing. Now, a niche line is just knowing that you might want to be able to sacrifice those Mutavaults to Vidalian Hexcatcher, but the main thing is holding up Autowara as a bounce effect, because if they make another construct token, or they do anything, it's just nice to have the Autowara up, and it's not necessarily worth 3 extra damage. They got a Shadow Spear off of that, and Shadow Spear is pretty good versus our deck, honestly. The lifelink is what really is annoying. They play out Thought Monitor, and there's nothing much we can do about that. Definitely don't want to bounce it right now. Then they play Sojourner's Companion, so that's a big 4/4 body. Then they play Mirror Enforcer, and that's another big 4/4 body. Then they play another Thought Monitor. This is what Affinity is known for. Well, it's more known for having a more aggressive turn 1 plays, but... one turn playing out 3 4/4s. Anywho. Yeah, definitely this is an explosive turn for them. Then they equip the Shadow Spear. On their end step, I was like, okay, well, we're going to vial something into play. And even though it's like not the easiest decision, I went for the Vidalian. Actually, this is pretty hard. Let's see what I did. Yeah, I believe I went for a Vidalian Hexcatcher, because if we do get a Seize effect, the Master Pearl Trident will make them both 3/3s, and having the Island Walk is nice. And I decided to bounce the Sojourner's Companion just because next turn it'll have Summoning Sickness, even though the Shadow Spear will require you to cast it again and then equip it. Their deck is already, like, so off the wall, I might as well stall, like, the 4/4 threat for a little. So, right now, their board state's huge, and it's going to be hard to come back from this if we do. So we draw an island here, which isn't exactly what we were looking for. They don't have any islands out, so we don't have Island Walk. If we did, though, we would be able to swing for around 6 plus 8. So we'd be able to swing for quite a few damage, but not able to do that. Because we can vial in a Lord, though, our Mutavaults will be 5/5s, which are perfect for blocking the Mirror Enforcer and Sojourner's Companion. So that's nice. They have another Thought cast. They played out that Urza Saga, so they are doing really good right now. And it's going to be hard to just pump through all these bodies. They play Cranial Plating, which is a really big threat, because they're going to equip it onto Thought Monitor, which has Flying. And then we're basically working on a very short clock. So they swing in with all of those creatures, and I'm like, okay, well, we gotta vial in the Master of the Pearl Trident, and then activate both Mutavaults, and just 4 blocks, obviously, and then block both them and kill them, which is good, but that Cranial Plating, such a big deal in this matchup, right now, at least. It's pretty big in the matchup, but, like, the Cranial Plating right now, definitely a big threat. So really, our only out would probably be Otawara or Merfolk Trickster to deal with that Thought Monitor. But we go down to 3, which is, like, really risky. So we're crossing our fingers for Merfolk Trickster or Otawara. Oh, actually, they can... Even if we draw a Trickster or Otawara, they'll be able to move the Cranial Plating because they have the double black required with the bridge in Springleaf Drum, so it wouldn't have mattered. We draw Silvergill Adept. I just decided to vial it in, see what happens. We top deck a Silvergill Adept. So I'm like, alright, this game's over. We don't have enough on board to swing for lethal. So we're just gonna cast a Silvergill Adept for 5. And what we draw is astonishing. I'd like you to guess. We draw a Silvergill Adept. And that was the game. Not very good for us, but I'll see you for sideboarding. Hey guys, so we're back for sideboarding, and I decided to cut 2 dismembers just because dismember is really weak versus any of their creatures, since most of the creatures are just unimpactful, and any of the creatures that become relevant are typically due to cranial plating or shadow spear, and when those are already equipped onto the creature, they can just move it onto another one, so it's no big deal. I also trimmed 3 subtleties just because subtlety is really poor in this matchup. If you think about it, the best target is Thought Monitor, and that really doesn't work out for us, and it's not worth the 2 for 1, and it's just a slow body. Now, I decided to bring in 2 Hurtkul's Recall because Hurtkul's Recall just completely blows our opponent's game plan. Hurtkul's Recall bounce basically every single one of their permanents, even most of their lands. It's just amazing. Now, I brought in a Brazen Borrower, since Brazen Borrower is really good at just bouncing the thing with cranial plating, slowing them down for a little, and it's a little bit more efficient with the 3-1 in the air, that little body, that little extra bit, so it tends to be just enough. And I also added in Force Negation, so I don't really think Force Negation is good here, but I really didn't want the dismembers, and I really didn't want the subtleties, so I was like, what's the best card we can bring in? And I'm like, Force Negation is not going to be too terrible. Not my personal favorite. If you're running the main deck and you want to bring in extra stuff, I would cut the Force Negations, but I figured it would be an okay card to bring in, considering we're bringing out so much. And with that said, let's get into game 2. Alright, we're on the play, and this opening hand, it isn't perfect, but it's pretty keepable. Silvergill Adept will hopefully draw us into another blue source. Lore of Atlantis is a good finisher, or even early game play. Brazen Borrower will be able to bounce any threat of our opponents, especially equipped with cranial plating or anything else. And then Swiloon, an amazing blocker and an amazing card advantage machine. So our opponent plays Springleaf Drum here, and there's nothing we can do about that, so it resolves. And then I believe they follow that with the Nemnite, and that resolves. And then they play another Memnite, and then that resolves. So this is definitely more of an explosive start compared to last game for our opponent. It's not that bad. They pass the turn from here. In this turn, we draw Lore of Atlantis, and that's fine. It's not the blue source we needed, but hopefully we'll be able to draw into that. We reveal Silvergill Adept and then cast a Silvergill Adept. And here we draw Vidalian Hexcatcher, not a blue source, but it doesn't require blue source and it gives us a few more options for our play. It makes passing the turn, if we don't get another mana source, more worth it. Just to hold up the Petty Theft and Vidalian Hexcatcher. So here our opponent just passes through. Also, just want to remind you, it's typically never worth it to trade a Memnite and a Silvergill Adept, because one you put much more resources into. So I decided we'll cast Swiloon just because it's a good body to start blocking if I need to, and also the card advantage will be nice. And next turn, if we draw another land, that'll be great since we'll be able to hold up the Petty Theft or the Vidalian Hexcatcher. They play a third Memnite, which is fine. And then they go for cranial plating. So I don't know why. I think when I was playing, I was having a rough day because I made quite a few mistakes for some reason. So they decided to attack with Memnite, and I'm like, okay, if I get another land, I could possibly give Swiloon Indestructible, and if not, I can tap Mutavault, make it a tapped creature, you know, get that Swiloon Indestructibility on. For now, I'll save, like, 10 life. And I completely forgot about Welding Jar. And, so that happened. I should have just probably taken the 10, but saving 10 life is still pretty good as well. But I wasn't thinking about that during the, block. So here I'm like, we now have 4 mana open. The thing is, we could Petty Theft the Nemnite back to hand and hold up the Vidalian Hexcatcher. So I'm like, you know what? Considering I probably won't need to block too hard here, I'll just pass through. So, and then attack with Swiloon. Because, you know, Petty Theft, block. They play Urza Saga, which is a really annoying land, but that's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but nothing we can do about it. They play a saccharine cranial plating. Now that's pretty annoying, but our opponent's at least empty-handed. They equipped onto another Memnite. So here, our opponent attacks with all 3 Memnites, and I'm just like, okay, well, I gotta bounce one of these Memnites. Looking back, it probably would have been a smarter idea for me to just have bounced a cranial plating. This saved me 1 life, but it meant they were able to equip onto another Memnite that turn, and it would have given me a bit more time, so not the smartest move. And here we just have to take 10. And then we're also going to go down to 9 because we're going to cast Vidalian Hexcatcher on their end step, because that's all their plays right now. And then they quit. Yep, so here we just run out the Vidalian Hexcatcher. And we draw Tideshaper, so that's actually nice because it can kill the Urza Saga. But I'm thinking in a way, we got 2 Lord of Atlantises, we got 2 Mutavaults, Spoon's a big body. I mean, is killing Urza Saga that relevant, or is Island Walk better? Because if you think about it, we're going to play out the Lord of Atlantis, and the Swayloon's a big body, the Vidalian Hexcatcher's a big body, and getting Island Walk could be extremely relevant here if we're able to kill our opponents soon enough. So it's definitely, like, consideration. We'll be able to swing in for 7 if we play Kick Tideshaper and just attack, but right now, our opponent does have some really big Memnites, and I'm like, okay, let's just kind of be in a more blocking mode, but be more open to not targeting the Urza Saga. Because I'm thinking we might be able to swing in for a lot of damage. Think about it. Next turn we play Tideshaper. Like right now we gotta be a little bit more defensive, but next turn we play Tideshaper and like Lord of Atlantis. We'll be able to swing for 5, 4, that's 9, 3, so that would be, I'm bad at basic math, that would be 12 plus, that'd be 12 plus 7, which is, like, pretty much lethal. So, here it's best just to not, I think it's best to just make Tideshaper go Island Walk. Our opponent passes through, they drew that Saga that turn, we get a basic land out, so that's good. And I'm like, alright, we got some damage, let me calculate this for a sec, we'll play out Lord of Atlantis first, just see about that, see if they make any constructs in response or anything, and I'm like, okay, let's just run out this Tideshaper, and, you know, I want to be able to activate one of my Mutavaults, we're going to tap out anyway, might as well use the Horizon Land. I targeted Treasure Vault, even though actually they could sacrifice that, and that was stupid, but they allowed it anyway. And here we just activate one of the Mutavaults and attack all. Because, yeah, I was calculating damage right now, but this is lethal, and that's actually really good. When you don't want to target Urza Saga with Tideshaper. Yeah. So we draw a card off Swayloon. Basic land, that's fine. Our opponent can't block anything. And I believe that should be lethal. -6, nice. So yep, good game for us. See you for game 3. This game we're on the draw, and this opening hand, it's so close, especially for being on the draw, but we just cannot keep this. So this opening hand, not as good in the sense that it had a lot of the cards we won in this matchup, but I'm not mulliganing down to 5, and it's much safer keep. So I bottomed the Hexcatcher, and our opponent played Urza Saga. We have Tideshaper to deal with it, so it's not that bad. Although they will be able to make a construct token with it, will at least prevent some tutoring. So they play out Ornithopter and then a Shadow Spear this turn, so that's fine. We draw Master the Pearl Trident, which is not exactly what we're looking for, since in order to really even play out any of the Masters or the Swayloons, we really do need the double blue. Ursa Saga triggers, that's fine. Here our opponent just plays out an artifact land, and then they play a Frogmite. So this is kind of the point where they have 4 artifacts out, so you don't really know if they're gonna go crazy or not, but they don't, and they just pass, so that's good. We top deck an Ether Vial, but it's too late to become relevant, and I'm like, gotta deal with the Urza Saga, so let's kick a Tide Shaper and target it. So, here our opponent swings with a Frogmite, and we're not chum blocking 2 damage, so we'll just take it. They play another Memnite, and that's fine. They play Thoughtcast, we really can't counter it right now. If I had Vidalian Hexcatcher out, I would definitely, or if I had the mana, I would definitely sacrifice Vidalian Hexcatcher to counter the Thoughtcast. No, I would definitely sacrifice the Tide Shaper to deal with the Thoughtcast if I could play out Vidalian Hexcatcher. So our opponent runs out of through a few more cards, but there's nothing we can do about it, and nothing here is too threatening right now. So Hercule's Recall is a really good card right now, because they have how many artifacts out? Like, that's pretty nice. But we also get to hold up Hexcatcher, so here I'm just like, pass. We're gonna pass. And what's really nice about Hercule's Recall, if you can, I always like to play it on their end step, because before combat, they typically get to slew out a lot of their hand, but if you have to do it before combat, you have to in order to save some life, but if you're able to do it on their end step, they might have to discard, they're going to be stalled until their next turn, so right now, it doesn't seem like our opponent will be able to do too much about a Hercule. We'll be able to play out Hercule's Recall on their end step. It won't seem like I have to play Hercule's Recall right now. It's nice to have it in this point of the game. What's frustrating though is we're still on 2 mana, so we're kind of behind in a sense, but Hercule's Recall is hopefully gonna slow our opponents down enough to a point where we can develop a board state that can kill our opponents. So yeah, I play the Hercule's Recall here, and my opponent's just like, oh no. They have 9 cards in hand now. It's their end step, they can't do anything, and now they have to discard 2. So thinking about what they want to discard. And I was actually kind of surprised, but not really surprised with what they discard. They got rid of Shadow Spear and Sojourner's Companion. So this game actually went a little longer game where both those cards would have been useful, but I don't think our opponent noted this. So I'm like, I'm gonna hold up Vidalian Hexcatcher. Let's just play out Ether Vial, because Isfayloon, I don't think she's worth it yet, and if I can get the Vial out soon enough to the point where vialing in a Lord becomes relevant, I think that'd be okay. Although playing out Swayloon is nice here too. What do you think you would do here? So they play out their bridge again, and they have the colorless floating, so they'll be able to establish their board state again. Play out the Memnite, play out the Ornithopter, play out the Frogmite, and I still have that generic floating in the Springleaf Drum, so that's pretty remarkable. Play out another Frogmite, another Springleaf Drum, and I'm like, do I even want to try to fight over this? Because it's a little too late now, and I'm like, I guess I was like thinking about it. I'm like, do I want to fight over this? I'm like, no, it's probably not worth fighting over it, so I was thinking a little too impulsively there. Yeah, this game, I don't know, for some reason I feel like I was brain dead when playing it, like, Ah well, probably just a bad day. So they play Pithing Needle, which means the Ether Vial is now dead. But it's not the worst. Ether Vial still isn't that relevant right now, so... Here we see a Tide Shaper. What's frustrating is I really would like the 4th land. That way I'll be able to, just play out, like, the Kick Tide Shaper or, like, a Master, but I can't do that. So I'm like, okay, at least I'll be able to play out Suiloon, get some decent card advantage, and just hope that works out. Our opponent's board state isn't too threatening right now, so it's okay. They play out another Frogmite, that's fine. And then here's the threat, the cranial plating. What's really threatening about this is the fact that they have an Ornithopter out. The Ornithopter is going to completely soar above Suiloon. Now, from a flavor perspective, this makes no sense, because Suiloon is a god of sea and sky. She should at least be able to reach up to the Ornithopter and block it. But from a realistic standpoint, we have, like, 1 turn to win the game now, and, that definitely isn't good. So, Ether Vial basically useless now. We top deck a land, but it might be a little too late for this, since if we kick a Tide Shaper and play Master the Pearl Trident, even though we'll be able to dodge the bodies, that isn't enough. We can't go double Master the Pearl Trident, and we can't, if we don't have the Island Walk, we're not going to make it, so it was just too slow. I'm like, let's just attack with Suiloon, where we can't win from here. So, Suiloon draws another land. Too late for that, though. And this was just a case of our opponent being able to, even after recall, just get their board out fast enough. And the cranial plating, really lucky from our opponents to have that. I don't know if they had that longer or not, but I played out the lure and I'm like, okay, this is basically game. I decided to just wait to make sure my opponent wouldn't accidentally click through their combat step, but yep, this is basically GG. And here we go, down to -6 life. Alright, so that was the game. Hopefully I'll see you around next time, and enjoy my next video.